Yeah, we are somewhere in between, so hello everyone and welcome to this panel discussion, to this panel session dedicated to sustainability of research management in terms of challenges and opportunities. So to give you a brief overview of the framework, this panel session is organized within the framework of the Research Management Working Group, part of the MCAA. And you may already know, as you are here, that in its conclusion of the new era, European Research Area, the European Council has recognized the need for the professionalization of research management, and many challenges have been identified, such as the lack of a sound and sustainable pan-European community of practice, the need of new skills and therefore the training issue, the lack of the recognition of the profession. So this panel session will address how developing research management in the new era will contribute to address all these challenges and opportunities and make the Europe in a better position to perform research. So my name is Hakim Ferria, and I work as a project manager at the National Institute of Applied Science in France. And sorry in advance for my French accent. And I'm very happy and glad to welcome the panelists. First, we have online Zlata and Irene, and on site we have Nick and Eitan. So maybe I'm gonna leave you the floor to briefly introduce yourself with your name, position, organization. So with your full name, then I am avoiding to badly pronunciate your family name. So name, organization, position, and also how you define yourself as a project manager or research manager. So maybe we can start with you, Zlata, and then Irene, Nick, and Eitan. Zlata, please.
Yeah, hello. My name is Novotná. Nice to meet you, also virtually. And thank you very much for inviting me to this interesting conference. I work as the head of strategic partnerships at Segev, which is a leading research institute in life sciences based in Brno, in Czech Republic. I'm also coordinator of Alliance for Life, which is an alliance of 12 life science institutes and universities from 11 countries. All of them are based in Central and Eastern Europe. So you can imagine we have not only researchers, but also many research managers in our community. I started at SETEC as the head of grant office. My task was to hire and train research project managers. Therefore, I also consider myself still as a research project manager, and I coordinate also Horizon projects. So therefore, I can say I have experience in the field of project management and leadership. And with the term research manager, I understand not only this project management in terms of pre-award, post-award support, but also positions in research administration, such as technology transfer professionals, managers of core facilities, maybe science communication officers, and so on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zlata. Irene?
Hi, so thank you very much, Hakim and Jonas, for the opportunity to contribute to this roundtable. So yeah, my name is Irene, or Irene in French, Arrata. I am the project manager of the ITN Consortium Chair, which is coordinated by the CNRS in Strasbourg in France. Essentially, it's a project about chemistry and how to develop more environmentally sustainable methodologies for chemistry with strong application in the industry. So I don't have as much experience in project management as Zlatuše, or I think anyone at this table. I have more of a scientific background where I did a master's in chemistry in Strasbourg in France and then a PhD in chemical biology in the UK, in the University of Leeds. I was set out to pursue a career in industry, then realized it wasn't really my thing. So I sort of accidentally fell into consultancy. And for a couple of years, I was helping startups and small companies access public funding. And that's how I came across European projects. And roughly around late 2020, I came across a job offer for this project manager job. And I thought it'd be quite interesting to see how it is on the other side once you have the funding. And here I am now. So now I've been doing this for about 2 years. So I have a good understanding of project management for IT and projects. Yeah, our project will finish in 2024. So you were asking also in terms of how do you define the project manager? In my case, I like the analogy that one of my coworkers has used for me, which he says I'm like a shepherd helping to guide the people towards the right path. And I quite like this analogy because the key thing for me about this job is that you're not expected to do the work, but you have to make sure that the work is done properly and in a timely manner and avoid deviations as much as possible. And yeah, I quite like his idea of a shepherd. I think it's quite poetic and quite nice. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Irene. And Nick, please.
Hello, hi everyone. I'm Nick. I'm the managing director of IARMA. That's very long, the European Association of Research Managers and Administrators. So we are a very inclusive European association of research managers and administrators. That's very broad. So going from people doing communication, science communications, policy advisors, project managers, all types of profiles, data stewards. I've been working there now for about 6 years to try to form an organization that is able to move forward with the challenges we'll be discussing today. I'm also in that capacity the coordinator of the RM Roadmap project. That's Research Management Roadmap, which is a funded project, the CSA, in the ERA part of Horizon Europe, so White ERA part, which wants to make a roadmap, a plan for the future, because the community is really facing quite a lot of challenges. IARMA has about 350 RPOs, RFOs, also a little bit, research councils across Europe, so we are in that sense quite large, and we have a large conference also every year, this year in Prague in about 2 months. We're really looking forward to that. I myself also come from the community. I used to work in European research project advice and also a bit policy funding and policy.
Hello everyone, my name is Eitan Segev. I have a PhD in biology and I worked for many years at the IBU University in Jerusalem, and I managed an ITN network until recently, and together with Hakim and Jonas we initiated the support group for project managers, and we do monthly meetings, and we will discuss this a little bit later. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Eitan. So I was asking all the panelists to define themselves as a project manager or research project manager, because actually there is a kind of debate on the terminology to be used as research management, project management, research support management, research management and administration. So I heard here research project management, shepherd also. In any case, we are managing research projects, but by managing research projects, we could also think about from a scientific point of view, like managing an experimental plan. But besides this scientific point of view, we are also managing administrative and financial issues, also communication and so on. And Besides this, there are also different kind of profiles of research project managers. Some research project managers, they do everything because they are the only one in the structures of managing research projects. On the other hand, we have some research project managers. They are part of a bigger team and they are managing specific tasks and they are included in a team with colleagues with complementary skills. So maybe we can start with this and try to describe research management. So maybe I can ask Zlata and then Irene with the same questions. What are your duties and tasks in your as a research project managers, and what are your qualifications to that role? And is your education and background in science or in management or maybe both? Zlata, please.
Okay, so I will start if I can. My current duties cover coordination of all these activities of Alliance for Life, including coordination of the Horizon 2020 project, which gives us funding. And I also represent CETEC in EU Life, which is another alliance in which CETEC is involved. And because I work in director's office, I was closely with the management. I am in charge of international and strategic relations of the institute, let's say. Yeah, so my original role at CETEC, however, was research project manager and head of grant office. So concerning my background and qualification for this position, I must say that the position was really something very new in the academic environment. And we speak about 20 years ago, when CETEC was established. So my background is veterinary medicine, and I spent many years in the industry also. So I received training in leading projects and in management skills. Therefore, my ambition at CETEC was to establish the grant office as a, let's say, professional in-house agency, or let's say company, in-house company. And I hired colleagues with a PhD in life sciences. I don't have a PhD degree, but I tried to hire, or I hired colleagues with PhD in life sciences, or even colleagues after a postdoctoral stay who decided to discontinue their research career, but still wanted to stay close to science. So I think this is a perfect setting, if you want to stay close. And I also hired 2 colleagues without a PhD, without background in life sciences, but despite this, they both are excellent research project managers. Yeah, so in my opinion, the background and the history in research make it easier to gain trust of scientists, maybe to establish a partnership relation with scientists. But it's very important that the research manager is, in the first place, a very smart, clever person with excellent English, with very good writing skills, very good diplomacy and communication skills. And this has to be a very proactive person. So I think all these skills and qualities are really key for this position. It's a complex, demanding profession, which, however, can bring a lot of satisfaction and recognition from researchers. So, in my opinion, the key thing is not the degree or, the PhD or the background, but really proper training and all these skills I mentioned.
Thank you so much. And Irene, what about you?
So I actually agree on almost everything, well, everything that Zlata said, really, in terms of the skills and background. So in my case, like I mentioned, I have a PhD in chemical biology, and I manage a project in chemistry. So it's not the same chemistry that what I did. It's a bit more technical. Like, I don't understand everything, but I have the skills to understand most of what the students are doing, and I think it's a strong asset. I find also that having been through the experience of having done a PhD, it helps me, like Zlata was saying, I'm more on the same level as the PIs. I don't know if they might still respect me if I didn't have a PhD, but I feel like I'm one of them, if you know what I mean. But also because for the ITN, we have 15 PhD students, and I can look at them in the eyes and say, I know what you're going through, I've been through this, and I can actually, you know, help them a little bit with this. So I feel there's an interest into having a PhD, although, like Zlata said, it's not mandatory. In terms of the task, really, so I'm talking about really my case of managing an ITN, which is, as a reminder, so a network of PhD students and their PIs. So I have 15 PhD students in my ITN and about the same amount of PIs from industry and academia. And there are really two sides of the work. The one side is the whole sort of admin, really sitting behind a computer all day and writing reports, preparing deliverables, sending lots and lots of emails, updating all the information of the project on the portal. That's really important because that's really what I was hired to do. But it's not really the most exciting part of the job for me. But for that, really, what you need is perfect English. This I absolutely agree with that, because everything is in English, and I have to summarize, you know, scientific reports and prepare all the non-scientific reports. I have to write them myself. So you need to be able to write lots of things in a concise manner as well. For example, whenever something goes wrong or there's a delay and we have to justify it, we need to go straight to the point, but give enough information so that the project officer understands why we need an extra 6 months for that deliverable, for example, without losing them in too many details. So that's a fine balance to find. But then the other side is really, for me, what makes the job rewarding is the human aspect, the social aspect. And like Zlata was saying, it's all about soft skills, communication. I would say also you need to be extremely organized because you have to oversee many people, many projects, many sides of one same project. But also, yeah, being able to communicate. You won't communicate the same way with a PhD student and with a PI, but also you won't communicate the same way with people coming from different countries. And it's very, very, we have people from all over the world in our consortium and in research in general anyway, so you have to adjust to that. I do feel like having done a PhD in a quite multicultural group as well really helped me because I already experienced firsthand we all have a different nationality, and you might say something that's absolutely fine in France, but you say that somebody from the other side of the world and they look at you quite funny. So you learn to adjust and to be careful. And also one thing that was quite important, I think, is that I found is I'm somewhere in between the PhD students and the PIs in terms of age, in terms of experience. And especially at the beginning of the project, sometimes the students, they might not dare to ask something to another PI that were not their PI, or they would be a bit shy about some things when they needed help. And very quickly you can create this sort of relationship of trust with the students, and they come to you. And for me, there's a very strong element of being a central contact point. So if anyone needs something, they'll just come to you. And that doesn't mean that I can solve everything, but I will help them find a solution or find the right person that they need to contact and maybe help them in the process. And yeah, to me, that's really the important part of the job, and the rewarding part of the job is to create these connections with the people. So yeah, like Zlata was saying, I don't think the background is that important. I think there are advantages to having scientific background. I think I would also have saved a lot of times if I had a management background, because that's my very first experience in management. Now, after 2 years, I've found my balance. I've found a good way that works with everybody, but there are things I would have implemented early on if I had known, but it's also part of my training, I guess. But yeah, what matters really is to have somebody with the right state of mind, somebody really social. Like, I feel this is my strongest skill in that project. and who can proactively ask people questions and do things. Somebody who gets things moving, basically.
Thank you, Irene. So you have highlighted two main points, training, and no matter your background, so training is important, and also the large, broad of tasks you are involved in. So it means it brings to think about how research management is structured in organization and in country. So as a comparison, maybe Eitan, can you tell us how research management is structured in Israel? Does the research manager part of a bigger team, or is it working with the PI only, and only during, is he hired or she is hired during the project life cycle only?
Well, on the country level, I can speak maybe on how it's structured in my university and how we did it. There is no structured team for project management. The project was initiated by us, writing the application to the Marie Curie, and once we received the project, once we were funded, the entire position was built by us or by me from the recruitment of the ESRs, managing the ongoing activities with the beneficiaries, working with the PIs, working with the institutions, working with the project officers, on the other hand, and managing and producing the workshops, training activities, and all this was done by me as a project manager. And I faced the difficulties which I believe most of you faced in this position, because I didn't have any, except of maybe looking at the internet or asking project officers sometime or our NCP. I didn't have any way how to know how the things should be properly done. So during the pandemic, once we moved to activities mostly to be virtual in Zoom, I met a colleague, Jonas is sitting here, and because we had this sort of a sister ITNs in more or less the same field of activity, and we started doing some collaborative training activities, and then we thought of a support. We knew that we realized we still have the same problems, and we were connected to Hakim, who built a similar network in France. Then we sort of built a wider network, and it now includes quite a few members with a monthly meeting. So you, Hakim, you have the same experience as I described in France?
Indeed, when I started to manage an ITN, I've started to build a network of French project managers, specifically of project manager of ITN coordinated in France, and the idea was to share best practices in terms of communication, secondments, legal issues, and everything. And we have now monthly meetings, and it's like let's say a coffee room. As you said, come as you are. If you have questions, you can find answers and share best practices. and this helps the community to in their day-to-day management of their project. And so this is really informal, but we try to keep track on all the meetings with minutes, so that we try to make it more sustainable. And for instance, for the newcomers, if they would like to find some answer to their question, they just have to have a look first in this minutes or forum and so on. So we have, as you said, some local initiatives, national initiatives. But if we take a step backwards and have maybe a European vision, maybe I'm asking you, Nick. So first of all, maybe why do we do a research management actually? And then, is your project you mentioned before you are in charge of within the ERMA, so the project called Research Management Roadmap could be an answer to all the challenges that have been mentioned so far?
Not to all the challenges, but
Yes.
but quite a few. Okay, yes. So the first thing that goes to why do we need research managers? The question is, what are research managers? And that's a very interesting question, and it's actually more than a question. There is no clear answer at the moment, because it's an open debate. And the thing that was discussed here, Eitan said his situation, the others said their situation. What your job looks like today is very context, it is based on your local context, right? What did maybe the PI, the university, the department, faculty, what did they think was the best way to go? Did they have a national framework to base it on? Probably not exactly tailored to what you wanted at that moment or what your job is, or had they have nothing to base it on? So there is no current recognized definition of research management in Europe. Even the term itself, is it research management? Is it science management? Is it research support? Is it a number of other things? And then what is it in the national language? So one of the key issues at the moment is when we go to what is the need for research managers, what are research management? What's the term? What's the definition? Because before you can define that, it's harder to say what's the need, what's the value proposition. Having said that, if you take it overall, there are some very important, clear things that we bring to the table that we make better in the system. And the key one for me is researcher time, right? So researchers are people, in a lot of cases, trained pretty much their whole lives and evolved to a place where they can have a very significant impact on the state of the art, right? But if you look at the system today, you have to also, look at getting money in project writing. You have to look at project management, of course, leadership skills, management skills. You need to know about integrity, data management, and so on and so on and so on. And it's very hard to manage all of that and then also do research at the same time, and education and so on and so on. Not, of course, not all researchers do education. And that's where I think one of the biggest roles of our community comes in, because there is a very different, there is a difference between being a project manager as a researcher and having a project manager. That doesn't mean suddenly that you don't need to know anything about research. It's a team effort, but there's also a difference in trying to figure out all of the research integrity and ethics rules that you need for Horizon Europe, and having an ethics advisor who gave you training a year ago and who now can help you with the specific things. So researcher time and giving as much researcher time back to researchers is a key thing why we need research management. Also, efficiency and effectiveness of the system. So if we look at it, that valuable resource is really the researcher time. Making somebody sort of become that much of a specialist in a niche. I know it's a bit, I'm trying not to take too long with it, is an investment. And does that person then need to do a number of tasks which are more compliance-oriented, but definitely not only compliance-oriented. There's a lot of stuff around there. There's a multiverse of different roles. So efficiency and effectiveness of the system, that's also why we need research managers. Also accountability towards the funding agency, the policymakers, towards the taxpayer as well, which we need to be really careful of if we are asking for bigger investment in research and innovation. This is a big thing. And trust also in the system. Next to that also consistency, because in a lot of cases, if, for example, a professor is super, or a researcher is super successful, all of these projects, postdoc, in a lot of cases, will not stay for a long time. That's just how academia works at the moment. Of course, we can debate on if that should change, and there's definitely something to be said for that, but also this consistency and HR part. There's a number of other ones, and this is also one of the things that we want to do in the RM Roadmap project, because we come from this place, what's the definition, who are we, where do we want to go? The council at the European level has already years ago in 2020 said research management must professionalize, and the Commission is working on this also. And the Commission has Action 17, which if you haven't heard of, have a look at it. The 4 pillars there in Action 17 of the ERA policy agenda, European Research Area Policy Agenda, are networking, recognition, upskilling, and capacity building. Now, underlying to that policy, there are 2 pilot projects, which is the one that I'm coordinating together with my colleague Borana, and there is also the Cardea project. And what we are being asked there is to work on this definition and to work also on where should we go in regards to training. And one of the key things there is first, before we get to training and maybe master's training and how we lead into such a job, we need to have this definition, we need to have some sort of a standardization or at least direction within Europe that we can understand this better, but also just understanding what is going on in Europe is the challenge at the moment as well. So we want to bring this together in a roadmap. We want to say this is the situation right now, this is where we think we should go. The way we want to do that is by inviting all research managers and also very much the people listening to this and here in the room to be part of this. So we are doing a very big co-creation exercise to ask these questions, and pretty much all European countries are involved in this. I don't know if I'm overstepping the time, Hakim?
No, it's okay. Just maybe...
Yeah.
No, I think what you're doing at EMA is extremely important. Up till now, correct me if I'm wrong, there is officially no project managers in the system of Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe. I mean, if you are a coordinator of a project, it's not a mandatory to have a project manager. You can do your research as a PI and manage the entire network on your free time. And what you are doing is putting a project manager as an integral part of the EU funding programs, and it's a must, and it's a knowledge that should be part of this entire of any funded project.
Yes, indeed, I absolutely very much agree on the use and the need, and it's super important. And don't get me wrong, because in a sense, I feel myself, there was a bit of a sound. I feel myself like sometimes it sounds negative, but it isn't necessarily that. It's just that there is so much difference. There are organizations that are super organized, that have made a nice structure around it, and that work well and that provide very good research management. There are also people who have pretty much no structure, but because of their personal quality and ambitions and all of this, also provide great research management. But there is, at the structural level, at the system level, there are things missing because it's not a recognized profession. So you don't know what a standard job description would be. Can a project manager do 1 project? Can they do 5 projects? Can they be asked to do both project management and gathering information from NCPs? Can they do financials and project writing and so on? Can you expect that of one person? Well, there's so many different roles, because it could be, if you're identified as a person supporting, for example, EU projects, that anything with the EU flag they give to you, right? Well, project management is very different to science communication. It's very different from policy advice in a lot of cases. And a lot of individuals are impressive and can do a lot, but they cannot have 10 jobs in one. And sometimes you're being asked to do that. And that is because your local context, your professor, PI, faculty, leader, administration leader has determined that that is what they need. Is that feasible? That is their subjective perception. So we want to be able to go towards some standards. Having said that, we're not there. We're working on definition, we're working on training, we're working really on getting people talking about it and getting people aware about it. And we want to, within the project, create a roadmap, a plan for the future. How do we go to a place where this picture that I'm saying is more structured, is better understood, but the context is complicated. But there is definitely hope, and there's already a lot of quality research management happening.
Okay, great, thank you. So I understand that in order to have the research management in Europe more sustainable, we have to structure more the research management and to take into account all practices in European countries. So maybe we could take the opportunity to ask Zlata. So we are here in Spain, so this is more West Europe. Zlata, you are based in East Europe. Are there any specific challenges you see in East Europe compared to West Europe? And when you were introducing yourself, you mentioned the project Alliance for Life. How this project could make the research management more sustainable?
Yeah, thank you for this question. I think it's a very, very good question because really I see specific challenges in the Central Eastern Europe region. And first of all, there is a lack of resources, lack of funding in the system in general. And namely, we lack stable institutional funding. You know, so this means that a big proportion of the institutional budget comes from competitive sources. This means from grants and projects. And this brings the need that we need more professional research project managers. But on the other hand, we don't have enough financial resources to pay them, let's say to pay them decent wages, you know. So this is one of the, let's say, drawbacks I see. Also, the funding landscape in our countries is quite complex, with many grant schemes, many grants providers, and the environment is fast changing, which this brings a challenge of being more flexible, work really very hard for the profession, you know. So I would say that in our countries, all these research institutions and universities have to work very hard to establish their reputation internationally. And it's sometimes very difficult to get well-trained people or to have funding for training for them. On the other hand, the positive aspect is that we receive structural funds and also widening projects. And these projects can provide funding for the grant offices and for research manager position in general. So thanks to this funding, some institutions who implement these projects can afford to hire professional staff. And I can say I also established my grant office at Segev thanks to structural funds. It wouldn't be possible without this funding. And we also implemented a big research potential project from Framework Program 7. So all this enabled me to really establish a very professional team. As for the second part of the overall question about the Alliance for Life, so we organized the RMA Academy and also the Skills Academy, and this provides training to our members, to our community, and this is funded from Horizon 2020 project, so it's free of charge for our members. There is a lot of interest. You can imagine our approach is, however, train the trainers. We want to make or create a spillover effect. And we advocate for the profession's recognition on our national levels. Yeah, so Nick would confirm that in the Czech Republic, also the professional association CHARMA was established. So this is one step to advocate for this, for making really some progress on in Central Eastern Europe, of course. So this is our contribution to establish the research manager position as a truly professional position. And this means, for me, this is a stable, well-paid profession. And it's really quite important to be introduced in our country's research environment. So as Alliance for Life, we make our best efforts to contribute. Thanks.
Thank you, Zlata. So then, so we have your point of view from East country. Irene, what about you? How, according to you, how we could develop the research management in terms of staff to make it more sustainable?
It's interestingly enough, from my experience anyway, it feels like regarding research management, there isn't such a strong divide between East and West. Like, I recognize a lot of challenges in what Zlata was saying. So from my experience, and also having discussed with people from the network of French Eitan managers, it seems as one thing it boils down to one thing, essentially, it's money. Because in France, you're hired for one project. So you're hired for, usually it's 3 to 4 years. I arrived, I did not have the opportunity to get any training in project management, although I made it very clear in my application that I'd never done it before. I know I arrived right in the period of pandemic where everything it was a bit special, but I don't think that it would have changed anything if I'd arrived at a different time. You're expected to just know what you're doing or figure it out, so you don't get any specific training. Then, like Zlata said, we need to make it a well-paid job. Essentially, in the current system in France anyway, if you want to be a good enough and skilled enough project manager to do the job, you have to accept to be underpaid. And then at the end of the project, bye-bye, that's it. Unless your unit can find other funding or another project to keep you, that's the end. There is no really future. And particularly in my case, and I think it's in most of Europe institutions, it's short-term contracts. So to get a permanent contract as a research manager is quite difficult. I know there are a few places in France from our last meeting where we discussed it, and some institutions are trying to implement it, but it's very, very new. I liked what Eitan was saying earlier, that there is no obligation to have a research manager in your project, but I feel like it's that sort of job that you don't know you need one until you have one. And you can become really invaluable, not just for the project, but for the team or for the institution you're working in. You can end up doing more than just managing one project. I think there could be a very interesting evolution of the work where you can help manage projects, but also structure projects and apply for new funding. And I do find that having experience in the management will help you understand better how to get a winning funding application as well, because there are things you've encountered and you know, okay, we need to change this. So it's a sort of virtuous circle of expertise, I think. But at the end of the day, we just need more investment to make this a real job, and not just have 1% of that grant or even less, and just accept to be paid on that. So yeah, investments essentially.
Thank you, Irene. And so you were highlighting an important point of a short-term contract and project manager that are funding only under the project. And this has also been highlighted this morning by Peter, but for early career researcher. He said he used the word miserable, and I do agree. So if we go forward, Eitan, how do you see the future of the research management profession in the future? future in the European Union?
Well, I would like to see it structured in the system level, to have it integral part of each project, same as when you go to the participant portal, you add roles to each beneficiary, and a project manager must be there under the coordinator team, and this will, I think, will make the institution consider this job as something that is needed for an ongoing success in project management and in receiving future funding in general. And it's all parties' interest. It's of course the interest of project manager, because it will give them some secure secure the job for the future, and it will not be fired, as Irene just said, after 4 years. It's the interest of the institutions, because it what I mentioned, that it will make it easier on the system to manage recruitment, project officer, other beneficiaries, other PIs, and etc. And it will also make it easier on the EU, because knowledge will not be wasted and will not go away, and it will be not only be continuous, but it will have more proficient and sustainability in the sense of EU project management. So this is what I'd like to see.
Okay, thank you, Eitan. So we have talked about different kind of initiatives, locals, nationals, European, and so we have project alliances, groups, network, and what I had in mind is that maybe it could be a risk that there are too many initiatives and too many actions led by their own locally, but it's a risk, but it could be also an opportunity. So now maybe as a kind of conclusion, maybe Nick, you could answer that question. What would be your recommendations to succeed, knowing that there are many actions that are leading locally or nationally in order to succeed and to make research management more sustainable?
Yes, I think you go to a very good point there, Hakim, also because there are so many actions that are needed and that are being done. And the key thing there is also for me, how can we have real change? How can there be a game changer? It cannot be next year. Of course, we can constantly improve, but a game changer can only happen if the system itself and most actors, or enough actors within the system, recognize the value, the need, are ready for investment, and are ready to set the frameworks and everything that is needed. For example, I heard here also from Irene that she said, so you have to accept you're underpaid, and then after 4 years it might be bye-bye, which is sort of a strong statement, but a very true statement, of course. And then it goes back to what I said before, you are dependent of your context, right? But how do you now fix that context? What are the actions towards that? And the first step for me is to get the conversation going between the colleagues themselves, right? Because that situation, for example, is solved, you could say, in a number of organizations. Number of organizations don't do it per set of 4 years, but they set up a project management team, which stays there, which has a permanent contract, project, they know if they have some size, this many project more or less are coming in. Okay, there's a project needing a project manager, we bring it there. But then you need serious support, of course, from the policy level of the organization. And they must say, we set up something like this. Sometimes they even set it up in a different legal entity to make sure that this situation of underpaid and so on can go away. Sometimes it's even, in some countries, a fully private, separate entity controlled by the university. I'm not saying that's best practice, but these things are in some cases solved again at the local level. Now, how can this sort of spread and become a standard? One, if enough people support it, but also know about it, and awareness is a big, big issue. So in that sense, having the conversation going and making sure that networks are there to get this conversation going, whatever they may be, informal, part of existing meetings, rectors' conferences, and so on. There's a lot of ways this can happen. And then I go to what Zlata was saying. So we are the European Association. Charma, with the lovely name, has been started in the Czech Republic, as also sort of upgrading this networking and this knowledge exchange. This is extremely important. But the first thing I normally always say is be good at your job. So be good at your job and show what can I do for researchers, what can I do for the system, what can I do for my organization. If you are a quality person that is doing quality research management, that will help. If all of us are doing that with tens of thousands, and it could be over 100,000 in Europe, if you look at the broad category, if everybody is doing that, that will contribute for sure. But also show what you're doing, because if you're doing good research management, then it tends to be invisible to the especially higher management, because you are not creating a crisis or a problem in any case, because you're doing a good job, but your outcomes and the big success is normally also not seen if you do it, because the outcomes are mostly seen in attracting more funding, having no problems when there is an audit, having happier researchers or researchers that can do more, that have better track records, and so on and so on. So you don't see it directly. So you need to really show it and actively show it internally, and then speak also how you showed that from one university to the next, looking at that picture. Now, I was talking about the whole system, so it's the RPO we're talking about, and we've been talking a lot about what is the situation on our side, but we need to clearly identify what is our added value towards policymakers, towards funding organizations, because a lot of RPOs, research performing organizations, are very independent and don't want to be meddled with. But when the funder says you must do this because, like Eitan was saying, put it in the participant portal, for example, then in most cases where the money goes, there can also be change. But it all goes back to, say we have all of this and we know we can solve the problem that Irene was telling us about. Like I said, it could be organized in a different way, but it all goes back to do people know that also? Do they know it? Are they convinced of it, of that value proposition? Can we translate that to policymakers? I think that's the most important stuff if on time-wise. So one, be good at what you do, be motivated, tell everybody about it internally, talk to your colleagues from different universities at the national level, regional level, and also take part in the RM Roadmap project if you want, and make your voice be heard there. Because what we will be doing there and the outcomes there will go to the Commission on the one hand, but we will also be creating guidance, which is completely sort of free and open to use by the national level. Because while we will have, I think, because of what the Commission is doing and what the Council has endorsed, good policy coming from the European level, in the end, it will be done at the member state level, and it will be done at the level where you are, by your organization, right? So it's up to all of us to create the momentum and keep the momentum, but the momentum is strong. The Commission is doing that, a number of member states are doing that. There are, like Charma was just founded, but a lot of national and other networks are forming. A lot of research performing organizations, rectors, vice rectors, and so on, other types of policymakers know what the value is. Because in the end, and that's maybe the other side of the convincing argument, if you don't build this sort of support for your researchers will lose their competitiveness at some point. And I think that point might be much closer than some policymakers realize.
So thank you, Nick, for your words. So now I would suggest that, so it's almost 1. I don't want you to be angry because you may be hungry, So I'm gonna give you the floor to the audience in case you have questions or comments on what have been said so far. And I would like also, while you are thinking about your question, to warmly thank all the panelists. This is more than the thank you for the panelists that are online. Thank you, Irene. Thank you, Zlata. Thank you, Eitan. Thank you, Nick. Thank you for sharing. I think this is really priceless, your input. And I'm deeply convinced that by sharing and by doing, we learn a lot each other, and this is a way to make research management more sustainable in the future. So now, if you have any questions or comments, so feel free to raise your hand or to take the floor.
Hi. Hi, I'm Pauline Razera from MIT Europe, and I just wanted to share some experience that is quite aligned with what you said, and I would be happy to discuss with others about your own experience. It's more my 3 main challenges as project manager. And first, my main frustration is that with the time, I see that there are more and more tendency to separate pre and post award. And I think this is a big problem when you are then implementing a project, when the project has been written by someone who is not involved in project management, because then you see that the person who writes the project writes something that is super good and super good to sell, but is very challenging to manage. And I see that the organizations have more and more tendency to separate the pre and post award, and that's my big despair. Something that is related and that you have mentioned is the recognition of the role of project manager. And because you are implementing what is written, so it's hard to see the added value that you've brought. And also, when you gain a big project, you are applauded because you bring funding to the organization. But then, if the project does not succeed, you may lose this funding. So it's theoretical funding until the project is concluded. But it seems that only you as project manager see it, and that the institution, once the funding is secure, like once the funding is granted, they forget about it, and you just have the responsibility to lead the project through the end. And as you said, if you succeed, no one sees it. It's only if you fail that people see it. And the third challenge is to make people feel empowered and about the project and feel ownership about the project. Sometimes I feel that when I ask researchers to do something, they feel that they are doing it for me. And I'm trying to explain them, no, you are part of the project, you have to implement the project. I'm just helping you implementing the project, but you are not doing this for me. And it's a bit the same with other departments within a university when, I mean, it's also about the role definition. You are the project manager, so you are doing everything that is not science. So I need help with communication. I have the feeling that I'm asking for a favor to the communication team, and that it's my job that I'm delegating. And I feel that most organizations I've been working in are forgetting that the project is theirs and it's not mine as project manager. I'm just working towards the implementation and with the contribution of all. So that were my 3 main challenges, and I would be interested of seeing your point of view about that.
I completely agree. I mean, I think most of us have the same experience. Once the funding is received, all the non-scientific part is channeled into the project manager position, and sometimes you are a solo player in this field, and it feels like asking for favors. Definitely, yeah.
Yes, this is also part of what you were saying, going to other departments, asking for a favor. Sort of the research manager in the most advanced thinking is more seen also as a knowledge broker, because it's almost impossible to have all the knowledge that you need to do it on your own, right? And you're within such a complex environment that you have to ask HR, communications, and so on, maybe a lot of other people. So that again goes to the lack of sort of structure that there is, because if there was more structure, more understanding, more awareness, the HR department or communication department would also know more what the importance is, and that you're not pushing work on them that is yours, but that you need their expertise and that you're together on this. Now, I know also from experience and talking to a lot of people, different departments in universities can be very difficult, but this is also one of, or difficult to collaborate between them. This is one of the challenges, but because the basics are not there, this is extremely hard to do in organization. The post and pre-award has been there for a long time. This is indeed, but you notice it even happening more, but it's in a lot of places that is separate, not everywhere.
My best position experience was when I was managing one project and involved in writing other projects. But now it's not happening anymore.
Yes, it is a classical subdivision, which most have, but not all. Some take it from the start to the end, then often segmented across the different disciplines, right?
Yeah, please.
Hello. Yeah. So my name is Martina O'Flaherty. I'm project manager at the Princess Maxima from Utrecht in the Netherlands. And I just have just input on what you say about the project when it finishes at 4 years, and then what? So I take your point about, you know, we should be more visible. And actually, when I was managing my former project, I did organize to get other project managers within the university together to form a group to bring to the university management that it's in your interest to have maybe a pool of project managers who have the know-how and have been through European projects or ITNs, so that at the end of the 4 years, they're not just gone with all the knowledge, etc., that they've gained over the years. And in that time, as a project manager, you're really quite busy managing your project, but then you also have to try and get the other project managers together to bring them together as a unit. And we started off with 15 project managers in the very beginning. Everybody was interested, and we ended up with 3. And I think it came because we were, you know, you'd get so far within the university and they'd say, yes, well, if, you know, talk about it and come back to us with a definitive plan, and then you lose people along the way. So at the end, we ended up with 3, and it took us a year to get to the person we wanted to within the institution. And at the end of that time, they said, no, we're not going to have a pool of project managers because, first of all, we don't have the funding for it. If the project runs out, yeah, what are we going to do? Just keep you in a pool for X amount of months until a project comes along. So I think I think maybe you know, getting project managers together as a unit to say, look, here we are, we have the know-how, is a really good idea. I just feel that project managers are really, really busy, and some of them think, well, why would we bother, because, yeah, what's going to happen at the end of it? And from my experience, yeah, I would not be motivated to do it again. I mean, it just takes time to organize and to get the people together. And then the end of the whole process, they just said, no, we're not going to do it. And there was a gap actually of 5 years in between. There was 5 years before they had tried to do this, and then they thought, okay, the environment is right, let's try it again. Yeah, and you just tend to hit a brick wall. So it's, yeah, I'm just talking from the institution that I was, so I find it very, very, very difficult. And so as a project manager, then you have to, as the 4 years end, you decide, well, yeah, I just kind of, well, what's out there, you know, it's, and you take all that know-how that you've gained, yeah, and it's just, well, lost, basically. I find it, for project managers, it is a difficult situation.
That's why we have to bring for tasks and forces together, and this is somehow what Fernanda said this morning. One voice is maybe not enough, and together, bringing the voice together, we can make maybe change.
Yes, indeed. Also in the project, very shortly, we want to look at the value proposition also, and make a convincing argument of that value proposition that will also be in European policy normally, or hopefully will be in there. Many have tried campaigns like yours and failed, and many have tried and succeeded also. It's we're wanting to bring all of that together, and indeed, if there are enough voices, then it can proceed. Although in some cases there's just policymakers that don't want to do it, and if you have one of those in your organization, it's very hard to move things.
Could I add something to that as well? I think there might also be an extra layer of difficulty, because in my case, I've had a discussion with the director of my unit. So I'm the only, we're the only ITN in my unit. So I'm the first and only manager. But basically, it's what I was saying, like, you don't know you need one until you have one. And I've had the director of my unit basically telling me, I would like to keep you, but I don't know how. I don't know if I can. And I still have a little bit of time for this, but it's like, even if there is a willingness to hire people on permanent contracts, it might be a matter of the funding's not available, or it might be a matter of we're not in a position where we can create a new permanent position, which is it's already a challenge in the French public research. So it's one more reason for which the project manager might think, well, I'll just go get a job in the private sector then instead. And I mean, we'll see what happens. In my case, I don't know. I'm hoping to see more permanent position being created in the future, but it seems like the system that we have in place right now is just not prone to that.
If I can also step in with my comment, I just wanted to comment on or pointing out that really it's very important strategic decision of the management of the institution if there will be or not some central department or some stable positions of project managers. And based on my experience, it's really important to gain support of researchers, because without having them on board, you wouldn't achieve much. And we were very happy at SEITEC that our management was from the very beginning open-minded, and really they gave me a lot of space to create the team. Then they used the money we received from structural funds, and in the end our researchers said that SEITEC gives them two benefits. One is the state-of-the-art infrastructure, and the second one is the grant office. So this is really a strong position, strong support we received. So I would advise colleagues to speak with the high-level management and to bring really benefits, to sell them the benefits the grant office can bring to the institution, and also to speak with researchers informally, go for lunch with them and speak with them, and it will change. I hope, or I believe it will change, because it's no other way how to improve, together with scientists and with the management.
So, sorry, very important on that. Tell them what you can do for them, and not what they can do for you.
Good point. So maybe there is one last question, and then we can continue the discussion during the lunch.
Yeah, thank you so much. Sorry to keep you all waiting. It's the last question. And my name is Tarun Agarwal. I'm the Director for Research and Innovation from Erasmus Mundus Association, and I'm also an Associate Professor. My question is, when we are talking about sustainable project management, do we, or it's more an opinion, what's your opinion about the new AI tools which are coming in, for example, ChatGPT, which can actually enable or can be a very disruptive technology or can be a very useful technology when we talk about project management. Do you have any take on that?
I was thinking about a short question because this ChatGPT brings, I cannot answer quickly about this. So far, in my understanding, ChatGPT is not well advanced to replace project manager at all.
No, I'm not saying replace project manager, definitely.
No, but it's very short. Our vision, if you want to be competitive in the future as a research performing organization or pretty much any organization, but as a research performing organization, you need to invest in research management and in every IT and especially AI machine learning. If you don't do both of those, then you will long term not be successful.
So thanks again, the panelists. Thanks a lot, Nick. Thanks again, Eitan. Thank you so much, Irene, and thank you so much, Zlata, for your participation and for accepting our invitation.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure for me. Thanks.
And thank you,
Thank you very much.
for